Table 7 was the one nobody wanted. It was in the back corner of the Magnolia Grill on Route 9 in Boiling Springs, North Carolina, wedged between the emergency exit and the mop closet. Underneath a ceiling vent that dripped condensation onto the table every time the air conditioning kicked on. The servers called it the swamp. Tips were bad because the table was bad. And the table was bad because the customers who sat there were usually the ones who came in alone, who did not want to be seen. She had been working table 7 for 5 hours and left $2 on a $6 check. Table 7 was where new servers were assigned and experienced servers were punished. She had been working table 7 for 5 months. Not because she was new, not because she was being punished, because she had asked for it. Her name was Grace Abigail Wynn. She was 17 years old. She worked the 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift at the Magnolia Grill 6 nights a week. And she worked the 6 a.m. to noon shift at a laundromat called Suds on Main 4 mornings a week. And she went to Crest High School in between, arriving late to third period with wet hair and the smell of industrial detergent still on her hands. She was 5'3". She weighed 112 pounds. She had a bruise on her left wrist that she covered with a hair tie and a cut on her right palm from a broken glass she said she dropped. And if you looked at her closely, which almost nobody did, you would notice that she never ate during her shifts. Not a fry, not a roll, not a single bite of anything from the kitchen that fed 200 people a day. She drank water from a styrofoam cup she kept on the shelf by the bus station. And that was all. She wanted table 7 because table 7 was invisible. And Grace Wynn needed to be invisible because visibility was dangerous. Because being noticed meant being asked questions. And questions were doors she could not afford to open. The man at table 7 that Thursday night was not invisible. He was the opposite of invisible. He was 6'4" and 260 pounds, and he was wearing a leather vest with patches that the hostess, a woman named Charlene, who had worked at the Magnolia Grill for 11 years, studied from across the room with the kind of careful attention people give to things they have been told to be afraid of. His road name was Forge, real name Dale Wayne Stamper, age 49. He had hands that looked like they had been made from the same material as the things they worked on. Iron, steel, the kind of raw stock that does not bend without heat and force. He had been a blacksmith before he was a biker, apprenticed at 16 in his uncle's shop in Shelby, and he still kept a forge in his garage, where he made knives and gate hardware, and once, he had a set of wind chimes from horseshoe nails that his ex-wife said was the most beautiful thing he ever gave her, including the ring. He had a daughter. Her name was Ellie. She was 14 when she died. Leukemia. The kind that moves fast enough that the word terminal arrives before the family has finished learning to spell the diagnosis. That was 2016, 8 years ago. Forge did not talk about it. He carried it in the place where the heat was, deep behind the sternum, in the part of a man's chest where grief lives not as a memory, but as a temperature, a constant low burn that never goes out and never quite becomes bearable. He had joined the Hells Angels 6 months after Ellie died, because he needed a structure that was not a house and a family that did not have an empty bedroom, and a reason to ride that did not require him to explain where he was going or why. He ordered coffee, black, and the brisket plate, which he did not touch for 20 minutes because he was watching the girl. He was not watching her the way a man watches a woman. He was watching her the way a father watches a child who is working too hard to hide something, the way the body compensates, the way the shoulders carry themselves at a height that is not natural, the way the eyes check the room in a pattern that is not curiosity but surveillance. He had seen that pattern before. He had seen it in Ellie, then in the months when she knew she was sick and had decided not to tell her parents, when she carried the knowledge like a stone in her backpack and smiled through the weight of it until the weight became visible in the way she moved. Grace refilled his coffee twice without making eye contact. She set the cup down with her left hand. The hair tie on her wrist shifted, and Forge saw the bruise. Not a bump into a doorframe bruise, but a grip bruise. Of 4 distinct pressure points spaced at the width of an adult hand. Purple at the center, yellow at the edges. The kind of bruise that has an author. He did not say anything. Not yet. He ate 3 bites of the brisket. He left $40 on a $14 check. He got on his bike and rode home to the house in Shelby, where the Forge sat cold in the garage and the wind chimes made from horseshoe nails turned slowly in the dark. He came back the next Thursday. Same table, same coffee, same girl. This time, he watched the other things. He watched her eat nothing. He watched her check her phone at 7:15 and again at 8:30. And both times her face did something brief and terrible. A flinch, a flattening, a micro-expression that lasted less than a second, but that told Forge everything he needed to know about what was on that screen. He watched her go to the bathroom at 9 p.m. and come back with her eyes red and her posture rebuilt, reassembled. That's the way a person rebuilds a wall after something has knocked it down. He left $40 again. He came back the next Thursday, and the next. On the 4th Thursday, he did not order coffee. He sat down at table 7 and waited for Grace to approach with the menu, and when she did, he said, "Sit down." "I cannot sit down. I am working." "You have been working since 6 this morning. You have not eaten. You are hiding a bruise under that hair tie, and your phone makes you flinch every time you look at it." "I have been at this table 4 weeks, and I am not leaving until you tell me what is happening." Grace stood there. The menu was in her hand. The dining room hummed around her. The clatter of plates, the murmur of conversation. The cook yelling an order through the window. She looked at Forge. She looked at the leather. She looked at the patches. She looked at his hands, which were resting flat on the table, open. The way a man puts his hands when he wants you to see that they are not holding anything. She sat down. She did not cry. She spoke the way people speak when they have rehearsed the truth inside their own head for so long it comes out compressed, factual, stripped of the emotion that originally produced it. A police report read from memory. "Before I tell you what Grace said, I need you to do something for me. Drop your city in the comments. Tell me where you are hearing this story right now. And if you have not subscribed, this is the moment. Hit that button. Because what this 17-year-old girl was hiding, and what Forge and 110 Hells Angels did about it, is the part of this story that turned Boiling Springs inside out and exposed a man that the entire town trusted with their children. Grace's mother was dead. Breast cancer, diagnosed in 2021, buried in 2023. Her father, a long-haul trucker named Jimmy Wynn, had been absent since Grace was 3. Not missing, just gone. The kind of gone that comes with a forwarding address no one uses and a birthday card every 2nd or 3rd year with a $20 bill inside and no return address. When her mother died, Grace was 15. Custody went to her mother's brother. His name was Boyd Preston Garner. Boyd was 44 years old. He was the head wrestling coach at Crest High School. He had coached there for 12 years. Thus, he had a state runner-up trophy in his office and a photograph with the school board chairman on the wall behind his desk. He was a member of Boiling Springs Baptist Church. He organized the annual turkey drive at Thanksgiving. He ran the Booster Club's pancake breakfast fundraiser every February and personally flipped the pancakes and wore a silly apron and let the children pour the syrup, and the PTA newsletter once described him as the kind of man every school needs. He had a firm handshake and a voice that projected confidence and warmth. And when he was appointed Grace's legal guardian in 2023, the school counselor told Grace she was lucky to have family willing to step up. Grace was not lucky. Boyd Garner controlled Grace the way a coach controls an athlete, through schedule, through expectation, through the systematic removal of autonomy, disguised as discipline. He set her curfew at 9:30 p.m., meant he required her to account for every hour of her day in a text message sent at specified intervals: 7:15 a.m. before school, 3:30 p.m. after school, 8:30 p.m. before bed. If the text was late, there were consequences. The consequences were not creative. They were physical. A grip on the wrist, a shove against a wall, a hand around the back of the neck that squeezed just hard enough to leave no mark above the collar line. Boyd understood anatomy the way a wrestler understands anatomy. He knew where the body absorbs force without showing it. He knew where to press to cause pain without causing evidence. He took Grace's paychecks, both of them. He told her it was for rent, for food, for the cost of raising a child that was not his. He deposited the money into his own account. Grace worked 46 hours a week between the diner and the laundromat and had not seen a dollar of her own earnings in 14 months. She ate at school. The free lunch program, which Boyd had signed her up for not out of consideration, but because it meant one fewer meal he had to provide. She did not eat at work because she could not afford to. The $40 tips Forge had been leaving were the only money Grace had touched in over a year, and she kept them folded in a tampon box in the bathroom of Boyd's house because it was the one place he would not look. She did not ask for help because the last time she asked for help, 7 months ago, when she told the school counselor, a woman named Mrs. Trask, that her uncle had grabbed her by the neck. Mrs. Trask spoke to Boyd. She spoke to Boyd because Boyd was the wrestling coach, because Boyd was a colleague, because the allegation was against a man she ate lunch with in the faculty lounge every Tuesday, and her first instinct was not to protect the student, but to verify the claim with the accused. Cyrus Summermans, which is the exact wrong thing to do and the exact thing that happens in schools every single day. Boyd denied it. Mrs. Trask documented the visit as resolved. Boyd went home and took Grace's phone for a week and told her, in that calm, coaching voice, that if she ever spoke to anyone again, she would be removed from the home and placed in state foster care. And did she know what happened to girls in state foster care? Did she? He described it. He described it in detail. He made the alternative sound worse than the present. That is what control is. It is not just the cage. It is the story about what lives outside the cage. Grace stopped asking for help. She requested table 7. She became invisible until Forge. Grace told him all of it. She told him in the back corner of the Magnolia Grill at 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday, sitting across from a man in a leather vest, whispering because the tables around them were occupied and because whispering was the only volume she had left. It took 11 minutes. When she finished, her hands were flat on the table, palms down, mirroring Forge's, and she was looking at him the way a person looks at the last door in a hallway, not with hope exactly, but with the knowledge that if this one is locked, there are no more. Forge listened to every word. His jaw was set. His hands had not moved. And at the temperature behind his sternum, the one that never went out, the one that Ellie had lit and grief had kept burning, rose. He did not raise his voice. He said one sentence. That is over now. He stood up. He walked to the parking lot. He called Bishop, the sergeant-at-arms of the Charlotte chapter, real name Terrence Waits, 53, a former Marine who had spent 2 tours in Helmand Province and who had a specific, trained, calibrated fury for adults who harm children. And Forge told him everything. Bishop said 3 words. How many tables does that diner have? 22. We will fill them. They did not come in 3 days. They came in 9. Forge spent those 9 days doing what Forge did. He built something. He called the Cleveland County Department of Social Services and requested an emergency welfare check on a minor. He contacted a family attorney in Shelby named David Boone, who had handled 13 child removal cases in the past 5 years, and who agreed to represent Grace pro bono after a single phone conversation. He tracked down Grace's father, Jimmy Wynn, through the trucking company's dispatch office in Charlotte. Jimmy was alive, driving routes between Charlotte and Savannah, and when Forge called him and told him what was happening to his daughter, there was a silence on the line that lasted 8 seconds, which is a very long time when you are listening to a man's entire understanding of himself collapse. Jimmy Wynn drove to Boiling Springs the next day. On a Tuesday evening at 5:30 p.m., 110 Hells Angels walked into the Magnolia Grill. They came from Charlotte and Shelby and Gastonia and Hickory and Asheville and towns along the I-85 corridor that most people drive through without stopping. They did not arrive on their bikes. They parked 3 blocks away at the First Baptist lot because Forge had planned this with the precision of a man who shapes metal for a living, who understands that heat must be applied at the right point and the right time or the work warps. They walked in through the front door in groups of 4 and 5, calm, polite, and they filled every table in the Magnolia Grill. They ordered food. They ordered drinks. And they filled the restaurant to capacity. And then they waited. Boyd Garner arrived at 6:15 p.m. He came to the diner every Tuesday to pick Grace up from her shift and drive her home, which was not generosity, but supervision. Another checkpoint, another leash, another way to ensure she did not speak to anyone between the Magnolia Grill and the house. He walked through the front door and scanned the room the way he always did, a quick proprietary sweep, and he saw the leather. He saw the vests. He saw 110 faces he did not recognize, and for the first time, his coaching expression, the one that said, "I am in charge here," the one that worked on teenagers and faculty and PTA boards, flickered. He walked to the counter. He said to Charlene, "Where is Grace?" Forge stood up from table 7. "She is not working tonight," Forge said. "She is with her father, and she is with a lawyer, and she is with a social worker from Cleveland County who is at your house right now with a warrant." The diner was silent. Every fork was down. Every conversation had stopped. Charlene stood behind the register with her hand on the phone. A man named Phil Dunlap, who taught history at Crest High, who had coached alongside Boyd for 9 years, who had called Boyd one of the good ones at a school board meeting last spring, sat at table 12 and watched Boyd's face change. The coaching expression dissolved. What replaced it was not fear. It was calculation. The rapid, visible processing of a man running through his options and finding, for the first time, that every door is closed. Phil Dunlap would later tell his wife that the moment he understood was not the moment Forge spoke. It was the moment he looked around the room and saw 110 people who had driven hours to fill a diner for a girl they had never met. And he realized that the reason they were there was the reason he should have been there, and was not. He had eaten lunch with Boyd in the faculty lounge. He had heard Grace arrive late to 3rd period with wet hair. He had seen the hair tie on her wrist. He had noticed everything and asked nothing, because Boyd was a colleague, because Boyd was a coach, because Boyd organized the turkey drive, and the distance between noticing and asking is exactly the width of a reputation that no one wants to disturb. Phil Dunlap stood up. He found the social worker on his porch and a dog. He said, "I should have asked her." Boyd did not respond. He turned and walked out of the diner. He drove home. He found the social worker on his porch and a Cleveland County deputy in his driveway. Boyd Preston Garner was arrested at 7:22 p.m. on a Tuesday in November. The charges were assault on a minor, financial exploitation of a minor, and 2 counts of child abuse. His bail was set at $75,000. His coaching contract was terminated the following morning. The state runner-up trophy was removed from his office. The photograph with the school board chairman was taken down. The PTA newsletter that had once called him the kind of man every school needs published a retraction that did not name Boyd but did not need to, because the entire town already knew. Mrs. Trask resigned the following week. Her resignation letter cited personal reasons. The personal reason was a 17-year-old girl who had walked into her office and asked for help and received, in return, a conversation with her abuser. Grace moved in with Jimmy Wynn, who had rented a 2-bedroom apartment in Shelby within 48 hours of that phone call from Forge. Jimmy was not a good father. He knew that. He had been absent for 14 years, and absence is its own kind of harm. Quieter than a grip on the wrist, but no less real. He did not pretend to be something he was not. He said on the first night, sitting across from Grace at a kitchen table in an apartment that smelled like fresh paint and apology, "I am not going to be perfect, but I am going to be here, every day, starting now." Grace looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. One nod, the kind that says, "I will give you the chance to prove it." The attorney, David Boone, filed for full custody, transfer, and recovery of Grace's stolen wages. The total came to $23,400. 14 months of paychecks from 2 jobs deposited into Boyd's account, documented to the penny. The court ordered full restitution. Grace opened her own checking account at the Shelby Savings Bank with the first recovered deposit, $1,847, and the teller asked her if she wanted to set up direct deposit for future paychecks, and Grace said yes, and the simplicity of that. The ordinary, unremarkable act of a person receiving money they earned into an account with their own name on it made her sit in the parking lot afterward for 5 minutes with her hands on the steering wheel and her eyes closed. Forge came to the diner every Thursday. Table 7. Black coffee, brisket plate. Grace no longer worked table 7. She had moved to the front section, by the windows, where the tips were better and the light came in and people could see her. But on Thursdays, she would walk to the back corner and refill Forge's coffee and set down a plate of cornbread that was not on the menu, but that the cook, a man named Eddie, made special on Thursdays now, because Eddie had a daughter too, and the cornbread was the only language he had for what he felt. Forge reached into his vest one Thursday and pulled out something small, a horseshoe nail, bent and hammered into a ring, crude, imperfect, not the kind of thing a blacksmith makes when he is not trying to make something beautiful, but is trying to make something that lasts. He had made it in his forge at 2 a.m. on the night Grace told him her story. Heating the nail until it glowed orange, bending it with pliers, hammering it on the anvil until it held its shape. He had made one like it for Ellie, years ago, for her 7th birthday. She had worn it on a chain around her neck until the end. He set it on the table beside Grace's water cup. "This is yours," he said. "It does not come off. It does not get taken. It means you have people, and your people do not quit." Grace picked up the ring. She turned it over. She slid it onto her right index finger. It fit. Not perfectly. It was a horseshoe nail bent by a grieving man at 2 in the morning, but it fit the way things fit when they are made by someone who understands that the weight of a thing is not measured in grams, but in what it cost the person who made it. She wore it every day. She wears it now. 3 months later, Grace Abigail Wynn turned 18. She graduated from Crest High School with a 3.2 GPA that would have been higher if she had not spent a year and a half arriving late to 3rd period and falling asleep in 5th. She enrolled at Cleveland Community College in the fall, studying business administration, because she had spent 14 months watching a man steal her money, and she had decided that she would understand money so well that no one would ever take hers again. Jimmy drove her to orientation. He did not cry in the car. He cried in the parking lot after she went inside, sitting in his truck with both hands on the wheel. Because that is where fathers cry when they have missed 14 years and are trying to earn back every one of them. Forge rides through Boiling Springs on Thursdays. He does not always stop. Sometimes he just rides past the Magnolia Grill, slow, engine low. And if Grace is near the window, she holds up her right hand, the one with the ring. And Forge nods. And that is enough. Some promises are not made in words. Some families are not built from blood. Some are built at table 7, in the back corner, under a dripping vent, i.e. by a man who lost his daughter and a girl who lost everything. And a horseshoe nail that holds them together the way iron holds. Not gently, not prettily, but permanently. So let me ask you this. Who is sitting at table 7 in your life right now? Who is the person you see every day but have never asked about? The one who arrives late, who eats nothing, who flinches at their phone. You do not have to be a Hell's Angel to sit down and say, "Tell me." You just have to stay. Hit the like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember what Forge understood at table 7 on a Thursday night in Boiling Springs, North Carolina. You cannot fix what you do not see, and you cannot see what you do not sit down long enough to look at. 4 Thursdays. 1 table, 1 question. That is all it took. That is all it ever takes.